Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. I thank everyone out there for joining us. As I say each and every time, I know you guys got lots of choices as to how you spend your time and energy. So thank you guys for spending time with us. Today, it's been a fun prep for this call because I've known the team over at Vericast for quite some time, but now I finally got an expert on the phone to share a little bit about what they do. But before we talk about Vericast, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, talk a little bit about who Mark is, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you get to do for a living.
Sure. First, thanks for having me, Jeremy. I'm Marc Mathies. I'm an SVP of Marketing Technology at Vericast. For those of you that don't know Vericast, we're probably best known as a cooperative shared mail provider in the restaurant space. That means we deliver those great restaurant coupons to the mailbox. But I've actually been working on the digital side since I've been here for about 14 years. I spent about 10 of those years working in the promotions and coupon space, building digital coupon solutions. And for the last 4 years, I've been working on a really great project to build a first party data marketing platform for our clients. So this has been an exciting journey over the last couple of years, and we're just about to ready to bring that product to market. So
I love it, and I know one of your coworkers, and we were talking with Matt a little bit earlier about just talk to me a little bit about kind of the history of Vericast and where it came from because I mean I've been in the restaurant industry for close to 30 years, and I had no idea who the heck you guys
yeah,
were, and now that I know, I see you guys everywhere. But I think it's one of those weird things where I had no idea. So if you could bring me back in time and just share a little bit about where you guys came from, because I think it's important for everybody to see the history, and then we'll talk a little bit about where you guys are going.
Yeah, I think for the relevant part of the conversation, Vericast is a bunch of companies that's come together through merger and acquisition. Probably the most relevant course of companies coming together was through the DNA of a company called Velasas, right? So a lot of companies knew us as Velasas. A gentleman named George Velasas founded a coupon distribution company for grocery coupons in the 70s and started through the newspapers delivering grocery coupons to consumers back then. Somewhere around 2008, we acquired a company called Advo in the
Okay.
direct mail space. And that's what brought us our cooperative direct mailer because we started to see at that time, if you remember 2008, right, the newspaper industry wasn't doing so great. And the company saw that we were going to have to find a new course for getting coupons and incentives out to customers. So there was an acquisition of this Advo company who essentially does this cooperative mailer. At the time, we were distributing to households under the name Red Plum.
Okay.
The new brand that we distribute under is called Save or save.com. You'll see the logo over on a mug over my shoulder for those of you that are watching on the visual.
Very cool. And again, I think that that's part of where I was super intrigued because I think every consumer has interacted with your product, but really not a whole lot of people knew that was where it was at. And so for
Yeah.
our restaurant listeners out there that might not be at a big national brand and maybe don't understand how the interaction works with you guys, before we jump straight into kind of all of your digital stuff, because I'm super excited about it. And
Yeah.
I've also been dabbling a little bit in the grocery space and the grocery media networks. I want to talk a little bit about that as well. But talk to me a little bit about kind of how does a restaurant interact with your guys' products and services as you guys have done that over the last number of years.
Yeah, so we have the ability to deliver our in the direct mail space. We'll talk about that a little bit. Love to get into
Hmm.
digital, but
Oh, for
it is
sure.
our DNA, so it's worth talking a little bit about the print product. So when we reach people through the mailbox, we have the ability to deliver at the sub zip code level, right, which works very well for restaurants. So we can work with small operators with one, two, three, four stores up to very large national brands that are distributing across our entire network, which is currently, I don't know, 120 or so million households that we can reach through the shared mail product. So we have a huge sales force that work directly with either the agencies or directly with the operators to sell flyer or sorry, more like insert advertising that makes it
Yep.
into our cooperative shared mailer. Just to explain that a little bit, I keep using the term cooperative mailer. That's really important, right? Because what we're doing is we're sharing the cost of the postal burden with a number of advertisers. So we have the ability to, through our manufacturing technology, to insert many advertising inserts into a single package and mail it as one big package out through the mailboxes, which brings a cost efficiency to every brand that works with us.
Yeah, and I think that from an efficiency perspective, at least talking with Matt in previous conversations, and I'd love for you to expound on it, is there's a lot of people that think, oh, mail is dead, or a lot of the younger generation thinking mail is dead. I can tell you for our family, really disappointed because I forgot to bring the coupon, but I did get a coupon. It drove me to a restaurant. I had a 10% off coupon to go to this restaurant that I wanted to try. It's a single one-off
Yeah.
restaurant. And ultimately, we went there and spent $100, and I would have had $10 off had I brought the coupon. It's still sitting on my counter, so they're probably going to get me to come back because the food was really good. But from an efficiency and an effective perspective, people are still using them every day up and down Main Street. Is
Oh
that
yeah.
is that correct?
Oh yeah, and coupons are more important than ever. I think we saw in the pandemic, right? Like competition is even greater, right? And there's no single way to affect a change in behavior than giving somebody a monetary incentive, right? Hey, you're going to
Hmm.
save money if you go do this, and it's that reminder also of, hey, there's some good stuff at this store. You haven't been there in a while, and guess what? I'm going to give you some kind of a discount for doing that.
Yeah. And I think, Mark, now I'd love to pivot a little bit to the digital side because I think there's a lot of different ways to interact with the consumer. You guys have been doing it in the mail for lots and lots of years. You
Yeah.
guys now getting attribution and figuring out who those people are. You guys have got a database, like you said, you're delivering to 100 plus million households. But now, how do we figure out who those people are? You guys know a lot about them already. The restaurants need to know a lot about them. Talk to me
Mhm.
about that shift and how you guys are thinking about digital and how you're thinking about that interaction
Yeah.
in addition to mail, because I don't think mail is going away. I think it's
Yeah.
in addition to.
Yeah, and we've been doing digital for some time, right? We've been in that space for a couple decades now in helping the same clients that we help in the shared mail product or the cooperative shared mail product in the digital space by offering display advertising. We can distribute through connected TV, which is the TV that you see through your streaming providers that you're binging every weekend, right? We're able to insert ads there. Video on your YouTube channel, right? We're able to distribute video there. So any digital channel that you can think of, social, search, right? We've been doing that for quite a while. The project that I've been working on ties all those worlds together and then takes the great amount of data because we do all this advertising and puts it to good use, right? So just imagine I talked about those 120 million or so households. Imagine the amount of data that we have at the household level because we're doing that advertising, because we're doing that targeting on behalf of our customers. We have this massive amount of demographic, psychographic, geographic data about these customers, and we're able to put that to use to help our clients. First, in the first case of digital over the last couple of decades, it's been targeting, right? How can we create a perfect audience that's going to drive a certain response for you and put that out into the market and then drive people either into a store or into some type of acquisition funnel. And that's where we've been focusing. But this most recent effort is more about first party data, right? So I want to get into that a little bit. What is first party data? First off,
Yeah.
right? It's all the data that a brand can collect because of their first party relationship with the customer, right? So it's things like email address, like when you sign up for a loyalty app, it's but it's also what you may have purchased, right? And sometimes that's associated if it's done through the app, right? What you might purchase is attached to your profile, and that's first party data information also. But then there's also anonymous interactions, right? You might go into a store and you might use cash, or you might not identify yourself as a loyalist, or you might visit a website to get information or download a coupon or whatever it is. That's all first party data, right? Super valuable, right? Especially
Yep.
in this new world of, of constraints and leveraging data. But we're building a platform that's essentially going to allow you to tap into your first party data, take all the great data that we have, right, from collecting against all the households and all the digital devices that we touch, marry it together ultimately to give you effective advertising. That's the basic plan.
Well, and I think, I mean, we've been talking about this utopia amongst restaurant technology for quite some time. In an e-commerce world, most of those e-commerce platforms have this data because they know who their customer is. They figure out how they got them there. They've been putting pixels on websites, advertisements on websites, or some other way to know who they are. But in the offline world, they struggle. Talk to me about that challenge, Mark, because it's a challenge. You've got this
Yeah.
vast amount of data about all of the consumers, but now how
Yeah.
do you target Jeremy Julian with 4 kids and a wife and lives in a upper middle class neighborhood and in the suburb of Fort Worth? Like those things change the behaviors of me as my with my family. And if I don't identify myself with that 10% off coupon and now tie that to the POS data, it's hard. It's hard what you guys are doing. So talk me through your guys' thought process and how you guys have
Yeah.
been doing that, because advertising is great, but if I can't tie it to the behaviors, it's that spray and pray thing that half of advertising works. We just don't know what half.
Yeah.
Getting to a place that we can do that is really where I know a lot of people are looking towards that future.
Yeah. Sort of the main pain point to start with is the data is disparate, right? And it's all over the place and all kinds of
And
different,
garbage.
and all kinds of different states of health, right? Like
Yep.
I wouldn't call it garbage, but some people may, right? It might be
Oh my
missing some
gosh.
fields. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a real problem, right? And it's not unique to the restaurant space, right? Every specialty retailer, every retailer we work with is seeing the same problems, right? It's data's all over the place, and I send my IT team is spending 99% of their time, right, trying to help me run analytics if I'm a marketer at a restaurant. Like
Hmm.
how do I turn that into something that's actually usable? So the first task is how do you identify all those different data sources, right? And how do you pull them together? What we've done through our NXTDRIVE platform, right, that we're actively building. NXTDRIVE is a cloud-centric solution, and it's what we're looking to do is unify all those disparate pieces of data. So that's task number one.
Yep.
Identify the data sources all over the organization for the client. Some of it might be coming from the e-commerce platform, some of it within loyalty, some of it from their app, their website. And how do we feed that all in and unify it into a single cloud structure so that we can start to clean it, dedupe it, make some sense out of it? Then the next step is, I think where you were getting at is I might have multiple interactions from the same person in that data, but I don't know that they're not unique. And so we use a process called identity resolution, which is able to identify those different streams and pull as much of that together as possible, right? So we might have a William, a Bill, and a Billy, right, all in the system. They're exactly the same person, but our data sources don't necessarily know that till we run it through the identity resolution process. And
Okay.
we're able to unify those information. So now we have maybe some app information of William, but we've also pulled some website visitation and promotional downloads from the other two, and we were able to unify it into one sort of holistic view of that customer. So
I love
that's
that.
that's the first step.
Yeah, and so you mentioned the new product that you've been working on. Can you give us just a broader overview of that? Because I think the
Yeah,
stepwise is great, but impact, I guess, from a long term perspective,
yeah,
I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about vision and where you guys are going with it.
yeah. So NextDrive is we call it a customer data marketing platform. So it's an important thing to understand that it's an end-to-end marketing platform, right? That does that data management on the front of it, which
Okay.
is a process that we call uniting of the data, right? Pulling it all together, making some sense out of it, right? And the very next step, we do a little bit of what I talked about earlier, which is we take all of our proprietary data that we've gleaned from our shared mail network that we know about the household at the mailbox level, information that we know about the digital user from their device level, right, and where they're accessing our digital advertising if we contacted those consumers before, and we overlay that with the customer's data. So we're going through an enrichment process using our proprietary data and laying it on top of the customers. And that's important because most retailers, including restaurants, have gaps in their data, right? They might only understand that somebody is an app user and that they've made certain purchases, but they don't understand the full demographic understanding. They don't understand what other interests that they might have. They might not understand what other websites that they might visit or stores that they might purchase from. So we're overlaying that data on top of what they already have, and we're able to produce more of a holistic view of that customer. And then so once the data has been elevated, now you have to be able to put it to use, right? And the good news
Hmm.
is Vericast is a distributor of advertising at large scale, right? So we're able to help our clients take that data that we've elevated and make audiences based on a number of different factors, some of which we're using very complex data science algorithms, some of which are very simple queries, right, to build segments against audiences and then deliver advertising out in a really smart way. So, which is hugely important, right, in terms of personalizing advertising messages to the right customer to drive them back into the store from a retention standpoint, using more advanced concepts like lookalike modeling to take those audiences and then amplify them out to the world and find people who are not in your app, right?
Hmm.
That look like them or have the same behaviors, and then use that criteria to hit them with an advertisement to drive them into your funnel. So now maybe they can become an app user at some point in the future, which is another gap that most restaurants have, which is they only see the world of the people who are coming into their stores or using their apps. And how do you grow that without reaching outside, right? So that's an important part. And then we layer on top of that, we're not done yet. There's a whole learn aspect of what we do, which is we build an analytics platform into the platform where the our clients are able to look at the performance of all of their data. They're able to understand their customers, run queries against it, run reports against it. And then when we run advertisements, they're able to see the performance of those campaigns. Then we take the byproduct of those campaigns that run, and we ultimately feed it back into the platform. So it becomes another enrichment source, which will help you predict where your next advertisement might be more effective.
So I've got a whole series of questions, Mark, and I'm going to start with as a restaurant brand. And I know you guys deal with some of the biggest of the big, and we've talked a little bit about the small guys. The data is everywhere. Data is duplicating every minute or whatever the statistics are. And so data historically has not been the problem. You guys are doing a great job of aggregating it, but data without analysis and testing hypothesis does nothing for us. So talk me through how you guys might work with a brand to understand that, because all of the data in the world means nothing if I can't
Yeah.
drive the behavior that I want to try the new LTO, to get them to upsell to the appetizer next time they come in, or to
Yeah.
to drive some behavior that you're looking to do to drive higher volume or higher margins, or what higher frequency, whatever those things are that are part of your desire to work with a brand and a product like this. So talk me through what that looks like as a CMO or as a
Yeah.
marketer or somebody in a brand that might need to do that.
Yeah, the first problem that I see is how many people went to marketing school, right, and then landed on their job, right, marketing for a restaurant, and suddenly they're a data analyst, right, and
Yep,
they're
exactly.
working with the IT team all day long,
Yeah,
or
they're like,
looking
I
at
want to go in Photoshop and I want to create really snappy TikToks. I don't really give a crap
yeah,
about all this data.
this isn't fun. I thought I was going to be on photo shoots all day and doing cool, really creative work, but the reality is that's what marketers have been resigned to over the last couple of years, right? Data has become so important, and it is so hard to get at, right, that most of your day gets sort of caught up in doing that. But the trick is, how do you separate the proper signals from all that noise that's in that data,
Hmm.
right? I always like to use the analogy that, like, the good news is I have a ton of data, right? And COVID enhanced that, right? Suddenly restaurants started collecting more data than they've ever had before, and they were playing catch up, but now they're drowning in it, right? Because it's
Yep.
like it can be overwhelming. How do I, if I can't make sense out of it, I can't make strategic decisions for my marketing. And but they all know they have to do it, right? They all know that data is what needs to tell them, right, where they need to spend and how they need to market. But trying to get to those actual activations is the hardest part, right? So
Yep.
you need a partner, you need technology. And I always say it's not just the technology either, right? You can find analytics tools, you can find softwares, you can find platforms like ours, similar anyway, or have the same value proposition. And they're typically plopped with the CMO or their staff and said, now go do your job. That's not necessarily any better, because now you've got the tool, but you don't necessarily have the time to do the work that's necessary. So you also need a partner that's going to help you along that journey. I think that's where we've decided as we bring our NXTDRIVE platform to market that it's going to have this consultative layer, right? It's going to necessarily have the experts who are going to help you use the platform to make those decisions, walk with you down the journey, because it's a quite a pioneering journey as well, because things are going to change rapidly in the next several years, and you're going to
Mhm.
need somebody to help you navigate all those changes.
Well, and I think the other piece that you talk about is 10 years ago, loyalty platforms didn't exist in a digital world. It was a punch card that I came into the bagel shop and somebody
Yeah.
punched it, and they knew who Mark was because they saw Mark every Sunday morning to get bagels for his kids or whatever. And so in that, they're very different conversation now that it's going digital. Everybody's trying to know who their customer is so that they can increase that value proposition. One of the other things while you were talking through that, your description of where you guys are going, Mark, is the customization. I
Yep.
happen to be a family of six. I have four kids. I've got three teenagers and an 8 year old. My spend patterns are very different. My
Yep.
spend patterns are very different when I'm on the road. At the same exact brand, I might be on the road and I'm going there for business. And when I'm home, I'm with the family, and it's very different. Talk me through even that, because the journey might be different for what I eat, to where I spend my money, and how often I order an appetizer versus a dessert. Again, just looks different depending upon how I'm interacting with the brand, and how does that come back to you guys from that consultative approach and as well as in the data.
Yeah, and I think that's the critical part, because it's always changing, right? And you're going to go through different cycles with your household as well, right? Where it might look
Yeah, when
that
my
way.
son's home from college, it's very different patterns than when he's
Yeah,
gone.
yeah, and that's what we're doing, right? There's lots of companies that can help you consolidate your data into a single view, and it's sort of a one-time analysis or augmentation that's going to help you for today. What we're doing is unifying all that data in a cloud-based instance, right? And it's updating on a regular and frequent basis, and it's constantly learning from those behaviors, and it'll ultimately change over time. And the recommendations that we're going to make for a campaign that's going to reach your household might look one way today. They're going to look different tomorrow and the next day, because it should be constantly learning and being updated. So as you make different purchase behaviors and it shows up in your app or some other signal that is being fed into the unified data instances, it's ultimately going to update the recommendations at the same time. And you might fall out of a segment or a cohort because of the change in behavior, and it's got to be dynamic in that way. Otherwise, it's not going to lead to effective advertising.
Anybody that's ever run a restaurant knows the craziness that happens during a meal period in a rush. One of our partners, Restaurant Technology's Total Oil Management Solution, is an end-to-end oil management system that delivers, filters, monitors, and recycles your cooking oil, taking one of the jobs that none of your team wants to do and takes it off your hands, allowing your team members to focus on their guest. Control the kitchen chaos with restaurant technologies and make your kitchen safer while maximizing your staff's time. The solution can be provided at no upfront cost. If you want to learn more, please check out rti-inc.com or call 888-796-4997. Well, and at the end of the day, it's not going to deliver the results that the brands are looking for. And so I thought we were going to get through a whole episode without talking about the machine learning and AI.
Yeah.
But talk to me a little bit about how machine learning and AI is playing parts in the analysis of the data, because you've got so much, but being able to serve up those suggestions that are going to be able to drive that behavior is important. And I had asked our CTO a few months ago, I was like, why is it that this stuff is coming? He goes, because compute's gotten so cheap, storage has gotten so cheap,
Yeah.
and these tools have gotten to a place where you can ask it just about anything and it's going to give you some suggestions. Obviously you got to pressure test it, make sure that it's valid, and at the same time being able to say, hey, what would happen if I sent this coupon out to Des Moines to this set of stores for casual dining? You can test that hypothesis and figure out what potentially could happen from it.
Yeah, I think AI and machine learning help us in a couple of different ways. Like the first of which is at the base level. I talked about the data gaps, right? You're missing bits and pieces of information. Every data source misses it. Now, I might be able to get some of it through enrichment or pulling in third-party data sources and filling in the gaps. But there's other pieces of data that can only be gleaned through data science, right? So what data science is, and I like to call it an art form more than it has
Yes.
science in the name, but it really is much more of an art form than anything else, right? So what we do with our system is first we build models that ultimately we can train with tons and tons of data and then the element of time, right? So if we can see certain patterns in behavior, like we can start to identify when your son's away at college or whatever, and we start to learn that this happens over time, we can make assumptions that that is going to happen on a relatively frequent basis, and we're able to fill in the gaps of that data. So we use data science in that way, not true AI. Generative AI is hitting all the headlines, but AI from a traditional standpoint, in that these are data science models that are being trained from the data because it's happening over time, and that's filling in those gaps and helping to draw more of a pristine picture of each consumer. Machine learning is the automation of that, like being able to take that and have it happen on an automatic basis. When I talked about the feedback loop between advertising performance data and having that feed into a recommendation engine, that's a practice of machine learning because it's happening on a regular basis. And those data science models are looking for the inputs and ultimately being able to update and make and fill in those gaps and make those recommendations. Other places where we're working with AI is more on the front end. So if you're a marketer, you have a hard time understanding of, I'm not quite sure what I should ask of all this crazy data, right? And I could give you a massive screen full of a bunch of different search boxes, and you're going to sit there and you're going to struggle. But if you can ask it a natural language question, like how many customers visit my store in this circumstance or that circumstance, and it's able to produce those results, it's suddenly leveling the playing field because marketers don't have to be data scientists anymore. They can just simply ask a question, interrogate the data, and get back the necessary response. So I feel like it's making data intelligence more accessible at that level. And I feel like if AI is going to have an impact on marketing in the next couple of years, that's where it's going to be, is leveling up the skill set of the marketer to be able to do a more technical job without having to have the knowledge that a data scientist or an engineer or even an analyst have.
Yeah, no, and I love that. I love that. So thank you for sharing. Mark, you talked a little bit about also in kind of that the description of what to expect. What's the I mean, at the end of the day, what our listeners are looking for is what does this mean for me? I'm a restaurant. How is partnering with Vericast going to ultimately make my day better, my week better, my sales volume better, or whatever that might be?
Yeah. So personalization has become like hugely important. So first off, if you're talking about talking to people that's already inside your bubble, right? Already in your app, now you need to talk to them in the right way that's going to activate them and keep them sticky. Because I think one thing we've learned in the last couple of years is just because somebody has an app or they signed up for an app, they're not necessarily going to use it long term, right? So you have to keep them engaged. I think personalization is really important from a customer engagement standpoint for that retention purpose. So hitting them with the right offers at the right time. Because we've
Yep.
overlaid that enrichment source to the data, we're able to help you build segments within your audience base that's going to help you do that personalized outreach in a much more efficient way. And let's face it, every dollar you spend in marketing is critical these days, right? That's even become, with all the pressures from supply chain and food cost inflation, when you spend a marketing dollar, you'd better sure that it's actually driving something off your menu.
Well, and the
Uh,
saturation of restaurants, quite frankly, because I've got 1,000 choices. When I go decide I'm going to go eat, I've got 1,000 choices that I can go choose to go eat at, and it only seems like that's getting more and more. And so, if I'm not giving
yeah,
relevant data to them, you're not going to get their spend. So, sorry, I'll let you finish.
yeah, no, I think that no, that's hugely important. I also think the other thing that I would add to that is it's become acceptable if you've signed up for a loyalty platform. I think some high number like millennials, or 64% of them, are happy to give you information about themselves or their buying behavior, as long as you're able to provide them a better experience or save them some money,
Yep.
right? So it's like you have the trust relationship with the customer. You might as well be using that for personalization, right, to ultimately craft an experience that's going to drive somebody to purchase, and that's hugely important. But I don't think it stops there. I think at that point, all you're really doing is engaging with the people that you already have, and you're driving them
Hmm.
back into the store, and that's great. But now you need to reach outside, right? You need to find people who are outside of your funnel and drive them in, right? You want them ultimately to be app users. You want them to be regular customers of your restaurant. So how are you going to do that? I think that's where Vericast has a unique value proposition, because most of our media types, including our cooperative shared mail package and our digital advertising, they're really suited for acquisition programs. And one of the things that we focused on with the NXTDRIVE platform early on was this concept of being able to do really smart lookalike modeling
Hmm.
at a geographic level, which works really great for brick and mortar, right? Trying to find people within a geographic radius who look just like your customers but may not be identified as actual customers, right? And then being able to target them through digital advertising at a relatively inexpensive cost and driving them to a conversion, like, hey, sign up for the app or get this coupon and come to the store, starting to get them interacting with your brand.
Well, and I'd love to talk for just a couple of minutes about what does the consumer experience turn into? Because to me, I get 400 emails a day,
Yeah,
and 20 or 30 of them are from different restaurant brands that I've signed up for their loyalty. And when they start pitching me Valentine's Day offers in the first week in January,
yeah,
not really relevant. And then when I get the second one and I get the third one, I start to tune them out, and I don't even read the advertisement. I might get the brand name and the title of the email, but at the
yeah,
end of the day, I stop reading it, and I'm probably not disciplined enough to go unsubscribe from them because I still like the brand and I might want to go there,
yeah,
but the advertisement's ineffective. And at the same time, as a consumer, delivering relevant ads to me changes my behavior. I living in the space, having known you guys and others that do what you guys do, I know it changes my behavior. Just evidenced by that 10% off coupon made us go to this local Chinese restaurant that we'd been to one time before. I got the mailer in the mail.
yep.
I looked at my wife and said, I don't feel like cooking tonight. Where are we going? It's sitting on the counter. She goes, we're going here. And then the kids forgot to grab the coupon and we missed our 10% off. I
But you
digress.
win
But
anyway.
but I went anyway, and now I got to go back and take my 10% off, and hopefully they don't tell me the coupon's expired. But I
Yeah,
digress. But at the end of the
yeah,
day, you're also adding a benefit to the consumer because they might get discovery, they may get something else. So I'd love for you to talk through not just driving that behavior of the discovery for the brands, but
yeah.
also the consumer, whether it's digital or it's in print, is also a huge benefit that I think marketers and, quite frankly, CEOs and other restaurant owners need to understand.
Yeah, I think relevance and timing are key. First off, obviously you don't want to hit somebody at the appropriate time, and I think that's where understanding your customers, their behaviors, their interests are hugely important. That all lays into that data enrichment. Like typically when you see somebody who hits you with the wrong thing, I'll tell you another thing that happens on a frequent basis in my household is I might get three mailers like in the household from the same brand, right? And like no,
Yeah.
I've noticed that they've had to pay postage like three times to hit my household
Yep.
once. So that's another problem, right? So that's a cost that you just don't need to have as a marketer. So hitting the right people at the right time is hugely important. I think restaurants have a unique problem in that time of day matters, right? And
Yes.
that's not true of a lot of other retailers, but in the restaurant space, like I want to hit you at lunchtime, I want to hit you at breakfast, I want to hit you just before your drive time for dinner, right? So that I can actually affect that behavior. And I think that is hugely important as well. And I think that's something that we're able to help with in a big way because we've helped you understand who your customer is a lot better than you did previously, right? We've enriched your data, help you understand it, and then activating against it is setting those journeys is the next logical step.
Well, I appreciate the education on all of that, Mark. I'm going to ask one last series of questions. I actually got a chance to see one of your guys' colleagues at a different event. It happened to be in grocery a while ago, and
Mhm.
a lot of these grocery brands are talking about this retail media network. And I know
Sure.
digital not just in grocery, but even in restaurants. I've got another friend who started a company. There's the Atmosphere TV guys that have been selling advertising for a while inside of different brands. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys think of on-premise advertising, on location advertising in a digital way, whether that's through grocery or retail or in shopping malls and all of that, because I think that's another key area that I think everybody needs to keep their eye on if they're not already thinking about it. I'd love a little bit of you to riff on it for just a few minutes to educate our audience if they haven't thought about it.
Yeah. It's an absolute phenomenon what's been going on with the retailer media networks that's happened in the last couple of years.
It's
Essentially,
insane.
yeah, essentially especially in the grocery space, these retailers started to realize that they have valuable inventory, right? They have these websites because they've built this sort of practice of consumers having to go to the website to get their digital coupons or their circulars, and they've realized that they get a lot of relevant eyeballs, and they've also realized that consumer packaged goods manufacturers, right, find
Yep.
that extraordinarily valuable. So they have this inventory that has had been underutilized for many years. So they started to realize, heck, if we package this together and either work with agencies, and in some cases, some of the larger retailers built their own media networks, right? And now you have to go through them to purchase that inventory. So hugely valuable. I think the next frontier of that are digital screens that live within the stores, right? That hasn't
Yep.
really been cracked in any big way. And Vericast is actually investing in that as well. Like, how do you hit the digital screens that you see above the deli counter? They're starting to see, I don't know if you've seen any in your area, but they're taking the freezer doors, right? And they're
Yep.
turning them into LCD screens and putting relevant advertising on them as well. We're in the
Yeah, I
process
was just
of
down at
building.
Seed to Table. I was just down at Seed to Table down in Florida in Cape Coral or somewhere, and they had all digital advertising, and they were driving the behavior of the consumers inside of a grocery store. And
Yep.
where I think it's relevant to our restaurant audience is whether that's your point of sale behind the bar, selling that advertising
Sure.
space to push Budweiser over Coors versus having it. A lot of people have Ziosk or where the Presto devices at the table to drive some of that behavior. So figuring out a way to get in front of again a friend of mine, Kevin, and this guy Doug are working for this company called Pammy. They've got a whole new thing that they're doing digital inside of retail environments. And so putting these digital screens to drive behaviors, I think whether it's grocery or it's restaurants or it's retail establishments or you own the whole mall and now you're going to drive the behavior to get people to go different places,
Yep.
that's valuable real estate, and those eyeballs are really critical to driving the behavior that you're looking for.
Yeah. Any retailer that you can imagine, right, that has a small price point, right, where you can affect somebody like at the point of sale, like almost immediately, like in a relatively fickle way, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how can I
Yeah,
influence
because
that
who
path
really
of
cares
purchase?
whether I'm drinking Coke or Pepsi? Some people care a lot, and some
Yeah.
people don't. And so if
Well,
I can drive the one behavior or the other, or
yeah. But
one type of
I
toilet
want to
paper.
if I want to change the way you buy your next car, I'm going to hit you months and months in advance in many different ways. But if I want to get you to buy a chocolate shake at the at the counter that you weren't
Mm-hmm.
thinking of buying, right? I can hit you with it in an immediate way. Yeah, and you start to see digital screens are showing up everywhere, right? They're
Yep.
above your if you have an electronic vehicle, they're above the charger, they're at the gas pump, they're inside that store at point of sale, at the deli counter, at the freezer door, inside restaurants like you mentioned, sometimes at the table, right, in case of digital menus or ipad ordering devices that are sitting right there. And that advertisement could be something that drives it. What nobody has done well to this point is build a network to be able to access all those screens from a central point, because if you have to do it one purchase at a time, contacting each store and saying, hey, can I put an ad in your device, right, it's going to be critical. It's got to be done in a very programmatic way where it's like a
Mm-hmm.
marketplace where you can go in and you can buy these screens as a brand or retailer trying, or if you're a manufacturer like Coca-Cola, right, somebody like that trying to reach somebody at a bar, you want to be able to buy that programmatically and hit all the screens at once, right? Or we've seen them want to do things like buy out entire grocery store change for the Super Bowl, right, to try to
Yeah.
drive purchase behavior around that. And trying to build that network is what our company has been focusing a lot of time on. And I think we're gonna be one of the very first and biggest that's going to start to stitch some of that together. Initially in grocery, but I could see us expanding into other channels as well.
Well, thanks for that education,
Yeah.
Mark. I think we're getting close to time. Talk to me. What would interaction look like? How should if our audience is out there going, oh man, I need to talk with Mark and his team about what it is that Vericast can do for me. I love where they're going on the digital front. How do they engage with your team, and what would an engagement look like?
Yeah, so you can certainly visit us at our website. So vericast.com. Vericast is spelled Vericast, right? So vericast.com, our website. If you are interested at all in our first party data management platform, NXTDRIVE, right? It's vericast.com. NXTDRIVE. And the next of NXTDRIVE is spelled without an E. So it's NXTDRIVE. So
Damn
vericast.com slash
technologists always make it
NXTDRIVE.
hard for people to, all the
Yeah, I
marketers are
know.
like, really, man?
Trust me, it would look really cool for the folks that get to see this on YouTube, but if you're seeing it audio only, I have to spell it out for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Mark. I think can't thank you enough. It's been a long time coming. Like I said at the onset, I got a chance to meet one of your coworkers a couple of years ago, and I've been enthralled with what you guys are doing in the way of data and how you guys are really driving fantastic behavior and offering a ton of value. So thank you for jumping on and sharing a little bit. To our audience, guys, we know that you guys got lots of choices, as I said on the onset. So thank you guys for joining us. If you haven't already done so while you're out going and checking out Vericast, go subscribe to the newsletter. Once a month, you'll get an email with all of the shows to make sure that you don't miss anything. Mark, thank you so much. And to our audience, make it a great day.